What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms.
Howdy Health Nuts. It's Saturday, July the 6th today, so again it's my special day. What's been going on with me this last week? The first thing was my bike. Now I ride a Honda Forza 350 and it is the big brother to the Honda PCX which I used to ride for a few years. And they both got the same fatal flaw. Two fatal flaws really. The first one is sheer design. They don't have a kickstart, so they're reliant entirely on their electric starter to get the engine going. So if your battery suddenly dies, which lead acid batteries want to do, you're screwed. You can't start the bike. But there is an even more fatal flaw. The battery is enclosed in a compartment which is underneath the seat. And also underneath the seat, especially with the Honda Forza, is a huge compartment where you can store your crash helmet and, in my case, my bag, which contains, you know, my wallet, driving license, and most important of all, the keys to the house, etc., etc. Now, I've been caught out by this many times with the PCX. You stop the bike and you're careless and you leave the lights on sort of overnight, and when you come out in the morning, not only does the bike not start, but there's no power at all to release the lock because the seat is also locked by an electronic lock. If that happens, you're in deep, deep trouble. And if, like me, once it happened while you were out, the keys to your house are also in there, so you're in even deeper doo-doo. So I religiously, absolutely religiously, when I shut the bike off, I make sure that it's fully shut off on the ignition switch and the lights are off. All except this time 4 days ago, when I took the bike to my normal exercise place in Bang Wad, and I spent an hour and a quarter walking the 6 and a bit kilometers around. And when I came back to the bike, to my horror, I saw that the headlights were on, and I instantly knew what I'd done. I'd forgotten to switch them off. And sure enough, I tried the electric starter and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't engage. There's not enough grunt in the battery. But thanks be to God, there was enough battery power to enable me to open the seat and get my bag out. So what do I do now? This is about 5 to 5:30 at night. What do I do now? So there I was, stuck at Bang Wad Reservoir at about 5:30 in the afternoon, and seemingly with no way of getting home. Well, I could walk it, I expect, but I started up by calling for help because thank God I could get under the seat where my phone was. So I phoned my daughter, who phoned Tom. Can you please come out here and help me? I can't start my bike, blah, blah, blah. And it turned out he was busy with a customer in the hotel. And he said, well, all the shops are closed now. You'll just have to wait till tomorrow morning. So I had no option but to walk home. So on top of the 6.2 kilometers that I just walked around Bang Ward, I had to walk about another 3 kilometers to get me back home. So I started the walk home. Thankfully, it was downhill all the way. And I started thinking to myself, because I'm an independent kind of guy, you know, I don't need anyone. Oh, no, 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 no. Despite the fuss I'm making over my girlfriend, I don't need anyone. And I'm thinking, I must be able to sort this out myself. All I need is a set of jump leads. Maybe, despite what Tom said, the battery shop, there is a battery shop behind our housing complex. So eventually I got home, somewhat knackered, but got into the car and drove round to the battery shop, and heavens to Betsy, they were still open. So I had a chat to them and they agreed to loan me a set of jump leads, which I must buy, and a spare battery. So, and they also loaned me a man as well, who followed me back to where the bike was. It turned out that the battery that they'd given me was completely useless and wouldn't turn the bike over. So I told the man, let's use the battery in my car. So we pulled that up alongside, and sure enough, it fired the bike up. So what I did was I let the bike, you know, idle for, you know, a few minutes. I dismissed the guy and he went home. It only cost me 200 baht, which is nothing. But now I'm at Bang Ward with a car and a bike. What do? So I decided I'm going to leave the car there overnight. So I locked it up and made sure it was all right, and I rode the bike home. When I put it in the house, and this is the big gut moment, I switched it off. And when I switched it back on again, it started right up, no problem. The next morning, I kind of had the reverse procedure to do. So the bike started, no problem. There's nothing wrong with the battery. It held its charge okay. That's fine. I left it where it was at home and walked back to Bang Ward to collect the car. Now this is a completely different kettle of fish, because I always knew that there were steep hills in the last little bit of this, but I've always been driving or riding the bike. I didn't realize how steep they were till I tried walking it. It bloody near killed me, and I must admit I'm still suffering from it now with aching muscles. But I finally got there, and then I did my normal 6 kilometer walk around and drove the car home. Final result, the car is okay and at home, and the bike is okay and at home. I didn't need anyone, so I can look after myself. End of story. Nightmares. I had a recurring nightmare last night, and while it isn't horrific in the accepted sense of the word, it's very, very disturbing. I find that if I have one of these kind of dreams, it's not the images that it leaves behind, but that quickly fade. It's the feelings in your heart, in your gut, that remain. And this nightmare, it concerns a woman, a lady, that just hates me, despises me. And somehow I connect her with Sony in the USA, although there was no one there like that, and her face is always indistinct. I cannot see her face at the time or recall it afterwards. I can only think of one lady that she didn't hate me, she just thought I was weird. You know, I'm British and I just don't act like them, and she obviously didn't want to get anywhere near me. That's fine, you know, there were never any altercations or anything like that. She just stayed away from me and looked at me in very peculiar ways. That's fine, that's perfectly understandable. But where does this lady come from? She must be some kind of mash-up, that's the modern term, some kind of montage of the people that are in my life at the moment that I think might really not like me very much. I'm not going to use the term hate, but this is really, really disturbing. And I've had it on numerous occasions. Last night was one of them. Suggestions would be welcome. Most of you would just say, well, you're an arsehole, so don't worry about it. Last time I discussed the merits of the actors basically playing Captain McCall in the original Lonesome Dove and the return to Lonesome Dove. Let's have another go at this, because today I'm going to discuss the two different versions of the movie. Most people will call it the John Wayne movie, True Grit. I'm going to have to refer to my script a little bit here, because I don't have a photographic memory. In fact, at my age, I don't have any memory at all. But the original True Grit starred John Wayne as Rooster Cogburn, and the same part in the remake was played by Jeff Bridges. And a lot of people panned him for just doing a kind of mumbling, grumbling version of John Wayne. But I don't agree with that. In the original, the Texas Ranger that assisted them was played by Glenn Campbell. LaBeef was his name. And in the second version, the remake, Matt Damon covered it. And again, I thought he did an excellent job. You know, in both cases, they didn't try to imitate the original actor. They put their own spin on things. But the third character, in my view, is much more controversial. That is the character of Mattie Ross, the girl whose father was killed by the coward John Chaney. Now, originally this was played by Kim Darby, who was way too old for the part. If you look at the original novel, she was only supposed to be between 12 and 13 years old, and when Kim Darby played the part, she was 25, 26 at least. In the second version, she was played by, was it Michelle Haley? Let me check. No, she was played by Haley Steinfeld in her first major role. And she was of a similar age, early teens, and she just did an excellent job. The baddie of the piece, Lucky Ned Pepper, in the original was played by Robert Duvall, and In the second one, it was played by Barry Pepper. That can't be right. I'll have to double check that. If I've got that wrong, I'll put it in a subtitle underneath. The coward Tom Chaney, who did the original murder of Mattie Ross's dad, was originally played by Jeff Corey, but it was replayed by the popular actor of today, Josh Brolin. And both Josh Brolin and the actor that played Lucky Ned Pepper were so heavily made up that you just couldn't realize them. And even Haley Seinfeld, when she met them on set without their makeup, didn't realize who they were. It's amazing. If you study the dialogue of both versions, you'll see that it's almost identical, and it's written in a peculiar style whose name I can't remember, which I believe was quite popular back in the Old West. It's just not the way we talk at all nowadays. And to a greater or lesser extent, both versions strayed away somewhat from the book, but more so the original, John Wayne version, where they altered the ending completely. The ending in the John Wayne version had him at Mattie Ross's farm, mounted on a horse, and she shows him the family cemetery plot. I'm back at home in the editing process right now, and I don't want to make this movie too long, but I feel that there's probably going to be required an editor's note or two, because the first one, both versions of this movie have two main themes. Theme one, it's a revenge movie. The coward Tom Chaney kills Mattie Ross's dad, and she takes it upon herself to go after him, and in both versions manages to kill him, aka a revenge movie. But the second meaning, which is rather more hidden in both movies, is the growing relationship between Mattie Ross and Rooster Cogburn. And I think it's especially poignant in the second version, in the later version. But Rooster Cogburn becomes a surrogate father to Mattie Ross. He ends up becoming the dad that she lost, and says that that's where she wants him to eventually rest next to her.
I would like you to rest beside me, Rooster.
And he makes the obvious reply,
"No, sis, that place should be for your family, your husband, kids."
And she reminds him that he's got no kin, and only the cat and Chin Lee, the Chinaman that he lives with. Where else would you end up? Some unmarked lump of dirt. And yeah, he accepts. He says, "I might just take you up on that, providing you don't want me to move in too soon." Obviously, she's still a young girl at this time, and she wonders how he's going to get his horse to jump over the fence, as he's such a fat old man. So he says,
"Well, come see a fat old man sometime." Yeah!
rides off into the distance and out of our lives. A common movie ending that you'll see in the remake. In the 2010 version, it ends 25 years later when Mattie Ross must have been about 40. She's only got one arm because part of the script is she got bitten by a rattlesnake in a mine and had to have her arm amputated. But she's received a letter from Rooster Cogburn saying that he's performing in a Wild West show somewhere or other, so would she like to come down and visit him, which he does, and she meets a couple of notable outlaws.
Yes'm. I am Cole Younger. This is Mr. James. It grieves me to tell you that you have missed Rooster. He passed away 3 days ago when the show was in Jonesboro, Arkansas.
I love the way that Cole Younger said that they'd had some lively times.
We had some lively times.
Their old West, old-fashioned way of saying they were on opposite sides of the law, and he probably shot him a few times.
What was the nature of your acquaintance?
And then Mattie quite rightly says that
I knew the Marshal long ago. We too had lively times.
So she arranged to have his body shipped back to her family plot. And buried where he would lie next to her.
I had the body removed to our plot, and I have visited it over the years. Well, she hardly knew the man. Isn't she a cranky old maid?
The closing scene is set in the cemetery, and it depicts a quite elderly Mattie Ross who explains that she never married.
It is true, I have not married. I never had time to fool with it.
She said she never had the time for it, but she's visiting Rooster Cogburn's grave. Now we explore another kind of theme in this movie, which is very close to my heart, which is the aging process. Now, the first instance is with Rooster himself, when he makes his death ride, if you like, to try to save Mattie from the snake bite. He rides his horse to death, and then when the horse collapses, he picks her up and carries her on and on and on. Eventually, they come within sight of his friend's farmhouse, where he finally collapses onto the ground. He can't go any further. Well, he pulls out his pistol and he fires it into the air. And thankfully, a light comes on in the house. And we can only assume that someone came out and found them, and Mattie's life was saved. Although in the book and in the second version of the film, unfortunately, her arm wasn't. Mattie herself, we see it all around us every day, but it's particularly poignant in this movie because right at the end we see this old maid that Well, I wouldn't like to say how old she was, but she could be, you know, pushing, well, in her mid-60s anyway, let's say that. But you have to remember the beautiful little girl that she used to be. And while she's in the cemetery looking at Reuben's rooster's grave, she starts to wonder about LaBeef.
I heard nothing more of the Texas officer LaBeef. If he is yet alive, I would be pleased to hear from him.
She said she'd like to hear from him, and she reckons that maybe he's changed somewhat.
I judge he would be in his 70s now, and nearer 80 than 70. I expect some of the starch has gone out of that cowlick.
And then comes the closing sequence, which is, in my humble opinion, so much better in the remake than the original. It uses the meme of the central character walking away out of shot of the camera. And here you can see Mattie in silhouette walking away from us to the strains of the old American hymn, Leaning on the Everlasting Arms.
What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace of mind, leaning on the everlasting arms.
And she's walking away from us out of the movie and out of our lives. And it's been used in other movies as well, one of which we'll cover the next time I'm in here, which is one of my very favourite westerns, Monty Walsh. Not the Tom Selleck remake, the original. But I've bored you enough, so I'll bid you goodbye. And in a future video we'll discuss Monty Walsh. Bye bye.